Good day, students. Before we proceed to the ongoing class today, I would like to tell you about the marks distribution of the final examination of class 10. Now the chemistry paper the theory paper is going to be of 80 marks. I think everybody knows that. Now the remaining 20 marks are distributed as follows. You have to perform a practical in the laboratory which will hold 5 marks. You have to maintain a file record of the experiments which you are going to perform throughout the year. That is also going to be for 5 marks. There is going to be a small viva voce for which 5 marks will be allocated. And then you have to make a project report on any one of the following topics. There are 4 topics. All these are given by the board. I want to remind you once again that these marks are not going to be included in your either first term or the second term or pre-board exam. These are going to be sent to the board towards the end of the year. Now these are 4 topics out of which you have to just make a project report on any one of the following. The topics are role of chemistry in cosmetics and toiletries, food preservation and processing, pollution in and around your city, ozone depletion. Now I'll give you some instructions for making this project report. The report has to be very brief, not more than 10 to 12 pages. The topic should be on the cover page, very nicely written, clearly written, and your own class and section and your name written on the top. Then the next page is going to be acknowledgement, which is going to be followed by index. Now in between you are going to write the report of whatever topic you have selected and let it be accompanied by the colorful pictures. I just want to tell you that the colorful pictures really attract the attention and forces the examiner to give you more marks. So let the pictures be very clear one and colorful another thing. The concluding page should have a bibliography. Now because you are sitting at home and you can do this project work during these days, that is why I have given you this work, but the marks for this are going to be, as I told you, towards the end of the year. Now in continuation with what we were doing last time, electrolysis, we will continue with a few examples of electrolysis. The first one being the electrolysis of molten lead bromide. Electrolysis of molten lead bromide. I hope you've understood why we've taken molten. When we melt it, the bond between lead and bromine has been broken down, and that is why molten lead bromide is taken. Alright, to do this electrolysis, we take a silica crucible. Why do we take silica crucible? Because it is non-reactive. It can withstand a very high temperature. It does not conduct electricity. So whatever electric current is being passed, silica crucible is not interfering in any way. That is why we take silica crucible. Which electrolyte is taken? Whatever we are trying to dissociate, in this case lead bromide. So molten lead bromide will be taken as the electrolyte. This is the electrolyte. And silica crucible is the electrolytic cell. We need to provide heat to it from outside so that it remains molten as long as the process is going on, because if it begins to solidify, it will stop conducting the current. The electrodes which are used are made up of graphite. If you remember, graphite happens to be an inert electrode. It does not interfere in the process. Now when we pass the current, as it is the lead and bromide ions are already separated from each other, the overall reaction is that lead bromide will dissociate into lead ions and bromide ions. This is how you write it. This means 2 atoms of bromine, so 2 ions of bromide will be formed. Now on the cathode, the positive ions are likely to move towards the cathode. So lead ions will accept 2 electrons and it will form lead metal. Children, it is very important to understand these reactions. Once you have understood this, you know the entire chapter. We have the same kind of reactions in the entire chapter. Now towards the anode, we have bromide radicals. So it is always wise to begin writing with a single atom or a single ion. Then there is no confusion. A single bromide ion will lose 1 electron and it will form a neutral bromine atom. Bromine happens to be a non-metal. So 2 bromine atoms will combine with each other and they will form bromine gas. Bromine, by the way, happens to be reddish brown in color. I am telling you this because they can ask you the observation also. This is a reddish brown gas. So what do you observe when lead bromide is electrolyzed? You will say that on the anode we see reddish brown gas coming out. So reddish brown gas will come out from here. Now there are certain reasoning questions which are associated with this process of electrolysis. I will quickly discuss them. First is, why is the crucible made up of silica? I have already told you the reasons. Then why solid lead bromide is not taken? You already know that the lead and bromine are strongly held by the electrostatic force of attraction. That bond has to be broken, which can be done by melting it. Once they are free as ions, they are free to move towards the respective electrodes. Why is the crucible heated from outside? So that it remains molten till the end. Why graphite electrodes are used? Because they are inert, they do not participate in the reaction, and there is one more thing. These bromine vapors which are formed, they are extremely reactive. They are very, very highly reactive. Now graphite, because it is inert, it is not affected by these bromine vapors. That is another reason why graphite is taken. Alright, why graphite is preferred to platinum? One reason is platinum is very expensive. As compared to graphite, platinum is very expensive. And second thing is that these bromine vapors, they do not affect the graphite. Now these were the reasoning questions which could have been asked. These two are the important ones. Now what you can be asked a question on, what do you observe when molten lead bromide is electrolyzed? So I told you that lead is going to be deposited on the cathode. So deposition is known as discharge. So what will you say? Actually lead happens to be silvery grey in color. So you will write silvery grey deposit is seen around the cathode and a reddish brown gas is seen on the anode. You may not name the gas, or you may not name the product formed here. Just write what you see. So what you see is a silvery grey deposit on the cathode and reddish brown vapors on the anode. This was regarding the electrolysis of molten lead bromide. Similar to this, we will now talk about the electrolysis of AC diluted water. What do you mean by AC diluted water? Actually, if you remember, water happens to be a non-electrolyte. It does not conduct electricity. But if you add a few drops of H2SO4 to it, which is a very strong electrolyte, this one begins to dissociate. This dissociates into H ion and sulfate ion. This positively charged ion sticks to the water, is a polar covalent compound. So this positive ion sticks to the negative end of water and sulfate sticks to the positive end of water, and that is how the bond between them is broken down and hydrogen and hydroxy are let out. So that is the reason. The process is also known as catalysis. If you remember, catalyst is a chemical substance which increases or alters the rate of reaction without getting involved in it. So in the whole process, H2SO4 is just acting as a catalyst. It is not getting involved, only helping in the dissociation of water. That is why it is known as catalysis. Now the process of catalysis or electrolysis of AC diluted water is carried out in what is known as Hofmann's voltmeter. Hofmann was only the name of the scientist who had devised this apparatus. So this one is known as Hofmann's voltmeter. Now here there are two test tubes which are taken inverted. There is an outlet over here for the release of the gases, and the water is taken over here along with some amount of just 2% of H2SO4. 2% means 2 parts out of 100 of H2SO4 is taken. So that is mixed with it. This is there are two electrodes here and they are connected to the battery. There is a key, of course. You put on the key when the current begins to flow and the process begins. Now when the overall dissociation is, or when you are writing the overall reaction, as I told you, as many things as there in the electrolyte, everything is going to dissociate. So first of all, H2SO4 is going to dissociate into H ions and sulfate ions. H ions are going to stick to the negative end of water and going to break it into H ion and hydroxy ion. So with the result we have anyway hydrogen ion coming from two different sources, and there are two negatively charged radicals, sulfate ions and hydroxy radicals. At cathode there is no competition, all the ions are hydrogen only. So H ions will accept one electron and they will form hydrogen atom. Again this is a non-metal, so two such reactions will take place. Two hydrogens will combine and they will form a hydrogen gas. This is occurring on the cathode. So this is how the bubbles are formed and this is how the hydrogen keeps on collecting. It is cathode because it is connected to the negative terminal of the battery. On the anode, this one, on this anode, what happens? We have a choice between sulfate and hydroxy. Out of the two, hydroxy happens to be down below in the reactivity series. So hydroxy has better chances of discharging. So hydroxy ion loses one electron, forms OH. 4 such reactions take place. 4 hydroxys form 2 molecules of water and 1 molecule of oxygen. Oxygen again as a gas keeps on depositing, and the bubbles of this oxygen keeps on discharging over here. Now in this entire process there are 2 very important things which I would like to discuss. One, if you notice that the ratio of oxygen and hydrogen is almost 2:1. 2 volumes of hydrogen and 1 volume of oxygen. Why is it? Very, very important question also. The reason behind this is that if you notice, in order to form 1 molecule of hydrogen, only 2 ions of hydrogen are required. 2 ions of hydrogen are required. But for the formation of hydroxy or oxygen molecule, 4 such ions are required. Now where will these 4 ions come from? When 4 molecules of water will dissociate, 4 ions of hydrogen and 4 hydroxy ions will be formed. All these 4 hydroxy ions will result in the formation of 1 molecule of oxygen. But 4 ions which are formed simultaneously of hydrogen will result in the formation of 2 molecules of hydrogen. So at any given time, the ratio of hydrogen and oxygen is always 2:1. Very important question. Alright. The second thing is, we see a greater concentration of H2SO4 near the anode. Now why is it that we have more H2SO4 near the anode? Actually, we have both sulfate and hydroxy present at the anode, near the anode. But out of that only hydroxy is discharging, but nothing is happening to the sulfate. So it just keeps revolving over here. Such ions which are just gathered around an electrode and not discharging, they are known as spectator ions. So sulfate over here is just a spectator ion. It is not discharging, it is just revolving around the anode. And hydrogen, because it is in large number coming from H2SO4 as well as H2O, is all over in the solution. It is everywhere. So with the result, we have a greater concentration of H2SO4 near the anode rather than anywhere else in the process. Now this one happens to be just input for extra water if the level of water begins to go down. Alright, now some reasoning questions related to the electrolysis of water. 1. Why is water AC diluted? You know this because it does not conduct electricity. When we will add H2SO4, then of course it will begin to dissociate. Why is dilute H2SO4? Now this is an important question. Actually any other acid, whether it is HNO3 or HCl or any other acid, is a very volatile acid. As soon as the temperature will rise a little, it will begin to volatilize. If nitric acid volatilizes and dissociates, it will begin to interfere with the process of water electrolysis. That is why we take H2SO4, because it does not interfere in any way and it is a non-volatile acid. What do you mean by a non-volatile acid? Does it mean that it will not volatilize at all? It will, but it will volatilize at a very high temperature, around 332, which generally does not reach. That is why it is known as a non-volatile acid. This is again a very important question, and you will be asked this question at a number of places in your syllabus. Everywhere the answer is the same. H2SO4 is a non-volatile acid. Now current is passed for a long time. In this process, we need to pass the current for a long time. This is because we need to measure the accurate ratio in which hydrogen and oxygen are depositing, one thing. And second thing is, we also have to see that we have to see the saturation of the gases, because the rate at which oxygen saturates water is different from the rate at which hydrogen saturates water. So in order to compare that, we have to pass a low voltage current for a longer period of time, and only then we will get the result. The ratio of hydrogen and oxygen I have already explained to you. Concentration of H2SO4 increases at the anode, you know that. Total concentration of H2SO4 molecules remains the same at the end of the reaction, because H2SO4 is only acting as a catalyst. It is not participating anywhere in the reaction. It is only a catalyst. So this is all. A worksheet will soon follow after this. Please do the questions in your copy. Have a good day, children.